What do we got?
Rajat Saini writes, "Hi AMC movie crew. I have heard John say that all movies are subjective and everyone's review/score of the movie is also subjective. So what makes professional critic reviews better/more credible than anyone else's review of the movie? Thanks for answering my question. Keep up the good work."
Yeah, all film is subjective. That is my religious mantra about all of films. It's all subjective. So it's a great question. Well, then why, read a movie critics, or why watch movie critics or anything like that? What makes them more credible? It's not so much an issue of credibility, whatever, but here's what it comes down to for me, okay? Let's say I'm a sports fan, which I am, and I want to hear a breakdown and an analysis of last night's basketball game. I can go to my friend Christian, who maybe watches 5 basketball games a year, and his opinion, because, whether you liked or disliked the game, that's subjective too. So his opinion is every bit as valid as some dude from ESPN. His opinion is every bit as valid. But I know he watches like 5 games a year. Or I can go to my friend Schnepp, who actually works for ESPN and watches
every game
and watches in excess of 70 to 100 games per year.
And the pregame and the postgame as well.
Absolutely. He interviews the cheerleaders. He knows everything about it. Now, his opinion is no more truly valuable or credible, whatever, than Christian's. But I myself, for me, I'm going to want to hear the analysis from the guy who is immersed in this, who watches more of it. Let me put it this way too. Let's talk about the world of video games. Let's say there's a new game coming out and you're trying to decide whether to get it or not. And there's one of 2 voices you can listen to. Your buddy Christian, who buys maybe 2 games a year and just plays those, and you like his opinion. Or, Schnepp, who works at IGN, and plays in excess of like 30 to 40 games per year.
Sometimes 80.
Sometimes 80 games per year. So it's still subjective because it's an experience about playing the game. And that becomes subjective. It's still subjective. But for me personally, I'm going to give a lot more weight to the guy who immerses himself into video games, has a broader spectrum in his vision about what games are out there and how they play and how they compare and all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to happen to listen to that guy a little bit more than I listen to my other friend, even though it's all subjective. I would say the same thing about films. I think everybody's personal opinion is completely valid. There's nothing that's not subjective about the experience. But when I'm trying to decide whether or not a movie's worth going to, I will more likely, even though I'll listen to my friends whose opinions I respect, I will also probably give a little bit more of my ear to the guys who watch 70, 80, 90, 100 films a year than I will to the guy who goes to the movie about 7 times. At the end of the day, though, it is all subjective, and it's about what works for you and who you should listen to. But you asked me the question, so that's my simple answer. Anyway, Schnepp, how do you see it?
No, I agree. I mean, I think nowadays, especially with the internet, everyone's a critic. I mean, there's a million people that you can get their opinions on stuff. So why people would go to someone like Christian or yourself or myself or anybody who does web shows or critics that have been printed for years online, why we watched Roger Ebert when we were younger, it's because you're looking for someone who not is smarter than you, but someone who might have a little bit more of an ability to be like, hey, if you like these films that I've seen that maybe you haven't, and I could put them all on the same plate, I could then level it up a little bit. I could say, this is a little bit better than this, and this one, if you like my opinion on this one. So it's also based on time. Like, I've heard this person's opinion on all these other films, and I agree with them on their opinion on all these other things, so I'm going to stick with their opinion on the future things. So you build trust with an audience. So that's the difference between someone who's like a vocal critic or a person who just talks about films or any kind of entertainment or media on a scale like what we do, because we're talking to a lot of people as opposed to you having a conversation with your friends. Your friends aren't invalidated. It's just they're not vocal and talking to thousands and thousands of people. So, and also, we don't know your friends. So,
Christian, what do you think?
Well, Schnepp nailed it too. For me, it's like, well, Mark.
By the way, the first ever YouTuber verified on Rotten Tomatoes as a film critic was Christian and Mark. So you have a particular point of view on this.
Well, yeah, because the thing was, Mark and I started doing this 7-8 years ago because we wanted to put the voice out there of people who just talked about movies and just like said, listen, we're going to go see it the same way the 3 of us would go see a movie, and then we talk about it afterwards. That's what we wanted to do online, because it's not that the other critics that were writing and everything were wrong. It's just sometimes certain critics felt like they were kind of talking down to you and saying, if you don't listen to this, then you don't know film. And I think the game has changed in general with, especially what we're doing here. Yeah. I mean, even from Talking News, you're right. It is building that trust with your audience. And I think that there's nothing wrong with you going to your friend. If you maybe you watch a review that we do or myself and Mark do, and you go, well, I don't know, that particular movie that they watched that they reviewed last week, I actually really liked, and they didn't like it. So let me ask Joe, and Joe who did like that, and it just depends. You can still watch people you find entertaining, see their points, and going back to John's point is because we all go and see movies so much, we have point of references for a lot of things, and we can compare things. So it's like it's just building up that repertoire of stuff that you know. And like John said before, and Schnepp said, it's trust. It's like, who do you want to watch this? Nobody's right or wrong. That's the one thing. It's like, you guys are wrong. That movie was great. To you. Yeah. To me, I didn't think it was great, or the opposite. I mean, there are tons of movies that we've all gotten flack for that have said like, that movie was terrible. You're terrible. Your whole hometown's terrible. Yeah. Comes with the job.
I can't believe you said that. Your mother accepted money for sex.
Yeah, where it comes down to.
Yeah, it does. You reminded me of something when you brought up Ebert. Roger Ebert is my all-time favorite film critic, and I hardly ever agreed with him.
I know.
I hardly ever agreed with him.
Big argument.
So then why was he my favorite film critic? Because of the other thing that you should look for in any critics you happen to listen to. Their ability to effectively communicate. That is a big thing. I loved reading Roger Ebert's reviews, even more so than I liked watching him when he did his show. I loved reading Roger Ebert's reviews because even when he was talking great about a movie that I hated and I thought was terrible, he would bring up such valid points and at least give me new questions to ask, new ideas, new thoughts, whatever, and to understand. Like, here's the other thing. I would still walk away from hating the movie that I hated, but hearing his other points kind of helped me understand why I hated the movie I did or why I loved the movie that he hated. Whereas I've got friends of mine whose opinions I trust, but I'll say, hey, how good was that movie? Oh, it was effing awesome, my buddy would say. I say, really? Why? Because it's effing awesome. Okay, that's great. But I mean, I really value listening to really good communicators sometimes, like a really great communicator like a Christian or Mark or Schnepp and stuff like that, who really know how to convey not just that they like or dislike, but convey the fullness of what they liked and didn't like and why they liked and didn't like it. And I think there's value in that.
I also think it's passion and honesty. Yeah, that comes to a bit. I mean, even if you passionately hate something, but not just it sucks. Why? Right. Because. His face. What? His face. Like, give me a reason why. So if you can put reasons out there for love or hate and connecting, and it's a fun thing though. The way you can, how much you see it though from doing this, everything we do, what movies mean to people. It's incredible. So anyway.